The silence in the 47th floor conference room felt heavier than the Manhattan skyline pressing against the floor-to-ceiling windows. Victoria Rodriguez gripped the mahogany table as the words that would destroy everything she'd built hung in the air. Mrs. Rodriguez, Dr. James Morrison, her chief technology officer and business partner of 8 years, delivered the devastating news with clinical precision. The consulting team's final report confirms our worst fears. Medicor AI's cancer detection accuracy has dropped to 62% in live trials. We need 18 months minimum for complete reconstruction. 18 months. Victoria's mind reeled. The IPO was scheduled for 6 months away. $2 billion in investor commitments rode on Medicor's revolutionary capabilities. Google Health and Apple circled like vultures, waiting for any sign of weakness. James leaned back in his chair, the weight of shared failure evident in his posture. I've run every diagnostic with our development team. The neural network architecture has fundamental flaws. We're competing against systems that learn and adapt while ours seems to be deteriorating. Victoria's jaw tightened. As the majority shareholder and CEO, she held ultimate authority, but James controlled the technical infrastructure that made the company valuable. If he declared the system unfixable, the board would listen. That's unacceptable. Victoria's voice remained steady despite her crumbling world. Find another solution. You have 48 hours. As James and the consultants filed out with their grim projections, Victoria turned toward the window. 43 floors below, the city pulsed with ambition and dreams. Somewhere in those lights were her competitors, her investors, her future. And somewhere in this very building was an answer she desperately needed, though she had no idea it was emptying her trash bins. The sound reached her first, soft, heartbreaking sobs that cut through the corporate silence like a knife. Victoria found her 9-year-old twin daughters huddled beside the emergency stairwell, their matching school uniforms wrinkled, their faces wet with tears. Between them lay scattered papers covered in algorithms and error messages they couldn't possibly understand. "Emma, Sophie, what are you doing here?" Victoria's executive mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the exhausted mother beneath. Emma, the analytical one who had inherited Victoria's drive for perfection, wiped her nose with her sleeve. "The babysitter canceled last minute, remember? You brought us here after school." "We heard the shouting in the conference room," Sophie added, her sensitive nature always attuned to hidden emotions. "Are you losing your company, Mommy?" Victoria knelt beside her daughters, seeing herself reflected in their desperate desire to fix the unfixable. "Mommy's computer program isn't working correctly, girls. It's supposed to help doctors find sick people, but it's making mistakes. Can we help?" Emma asked with the directness only children possessed. Before Victoria could explain why 9-year-olds couldn't solve billion-dollar technical problems, a gentle voice interrupted their family crisis. "Excuse me, are you ladies all right?" They looked up to see a man in navy custodial uniform, his dark hair showing threads of premature silver, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Marcus Chen had been pushing his cleaning cart through this floor for 3 years, invisible to the executives who rushed past him. But children's tears were impossible to ignore. "We're fine," Victoria started to say, but Sophie had already moved toward this stranger who radiated an unusual calm that their frantic world desperately needed. "Our mom's computer is supposed to find sick parts in people," Sophie explained, holding up one of the diagnostic printouts with its incomprehensible columns of numbers. "But it keeps making mistakes, and everyone's really scared." Marcus glanced at the paper in Sophie's small hands, and his breath caught. Deep learning parameters. Convolutional neural network diagnostics, backpropagation error rates. This was his language, the mathematics of artificial intelligence that had once been his entire world. "May I take a look?" he asked Victoria, his tone carrying a careful respect that seemed somehow different from typical service staff deference. Something in his voice made her nod. Marcus sat cross-legged on the marble floor, bringing himself to the children's eye level, and studied the diagnostic output with an intensity that immediately caught Victoria's attention. "You know what your mom's computer is trying to do?" Marcus began, his voice taking on the rhythm of a natural teacher. "It's learning to be a detective, a very special detective who looks at tiny pictures through a microscope and has to decide, is everything normal here, or is there danger hiding that we need to find?" He pointed to specific numbers on the printout, his finger tracing patterns that meant nothing to the children, but everything to Victoria, who was beginning to realize this was no ordinary janitor. But right now, this detective is trying to solve too many different kinds of mysteries at exactly the same time. Imagine if you had to do your math homework while also painting a picture and writing a story, all at once. You'd get confused, wouldn't you? Emma leaned closer, her analytical mind engaged despite her tears. "That would be really hard." "Exactly." Marcus pulled a red crayon from Sophie's art kit and began sketching simple diagrams on the back of the paper. "The computer needs to focus on being really, really good at finding one specific type of problem first. Then, once it masters that, we can teach it to look for other things." In 15 minutes, this custodial worker had identified what a team of MIT consultants couldn't see in 3 weeks. The neural network was suffering from catastrophic interference between competing objective functions. The solution wasn't more complexity, it was elegant simplification through sequential learning protocols. "How do you know all this?" Emma asked, studying Marcus with the same intense curiosity she usually reserved for her favorite science books. Marcus's smile faded slightly, and Victoria saw something flicker across his features. Pain, recognition, perhaps regret. "I used to work with computers like this before I had this job." Victoria had been watching this interaction with growing amazement and a creeping suspicion that was making her pulse quicken. This man understood her life's work better than experts who charged more per hour than most people earned in a month. "Wait," she said as Marcus started to stand and return to his cleaning cart. Her voice carried the sharp edge of sudden realization. "Where exactly did you learn about neural network architecture?" Marcus paused, his hand freezing on the handle of his cart. In that moment, Victoria saw him make a decision. She could watch the exact instant when he chose to stop hiding. "It was a long time ago, Mrs. Rodriguez," he said finally. "Dr. Marcus Chen." It wasn't a question. Victoria's voice carried the weight of recognition and disbelief. "Stanford Medical AI Lab, author of 47 peer-reviewed papers. The man who invented the foundational algorithms that every medical detection system in the world uses today." The color drained from Marcus's face. Around them, the building hummed with its nighttime quiet, but the silence between them felt explosive. "That person doesn't exist anymore," Marcus whispered. "Why?" Victoria demanded, her CEO instincts taking over. "Why is one of the most brilliant minds in artificial intelligence working as a janitor in my building?" For a long moment, Marcus stared at the papers in Sophie's hands, the broken code that could be fixed, the promising research that could save thousands of lives, the future that could be brilliant if only someone had the right key to unlock it. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of unbearable loss. "Because that person forgot what matters most until it was too late to matter at all." Victoria spent the sleepless hours that followed piecing together the tragedy of Dr. Marcus Chen, the man who had been destined to revolutionize medical artificial intelligence, until one devastating choice changed everything. The research came easily. Marcus hadn't tried to hide his identity. He had simply stepped away from a spotlight that no longer illuminated anything he cared about. The academic articles painted a picture of meteoric rise. Youngest tenured professor in Stanford's history, recipient of every major AI research grant. the visionary whose algorithms formed the backbone of modern medical detection systems. The timeline told a story of relentless achievement, breakthrough publications every 6 months, speaking engagements across 3 continents, consulting contracts with every major technology company, and then 3 years ago, complete and total silence. The next evening, Victoria waited in the parking garage as Marcus loaded his cleaning supplies into a battered Honda Civic, a car that spoke volumes about how far someone could fall when the world they had conquered no longer mattered. Mrs. Rodriguez, Marcus acknowledged her presence without surprise. I hope my conversation with your daughters didn't cause any problems. I understand my position here. Do you? Victoria stepped closer, her voice gentle but probing. Because I think you've forgotten exactly who you are. Marcus shook his head, something raw and broken flickering behind his carefully composed exterior. I remember exactly who I am. I'm the man who solved artificial intelligence problems while his wife died alone in a hospital room. I'm the father who was presenting to investors when his newborn daughter needed him most. The words carried such pain that Victoria felt her own carefully constructed emotional walls begin to crack. Tell me what happened, Marcus. All of it. And there, in the fluorescent-lit garage, as the last commuters headed home to families they would actually prioritize, Marcus told her everything. Dr. Linda Chen had been his research partner first, his intellectual equal, his wife second. They had met in graduate school, 2 brilliant minds chasing the same impossible dream of artificial intelligence that could detect cancer years before traditional methods, algorithms that could save millions of lives annually. Linda was the superior scientist, Marcus began, his voice thick with memory, more intuitive about how biological systems actually function. I was just better at writing grant proposals and publishing papers that impressed tenure committees. Their breakthrough had come during Linda's pregnancy, a revolutionary approach to pattern recognition that could identify malignant cells with unprecedented accuracy. The timing couldn't have been more cruel or more promising, depending on one's perspective. She started showing symptoms at 30 weeks, Marcus continued, his hands gripping the car keys until his knuckles went white. Severe preeclampsia, protein in her urine, blood pressure spiking dangerously, signs of organ stress. The doctors said she needed immediate hospitalization, possibly emergency delivery. Victoria felt nauseated, seeing herself in this story, recognizing the impossible choices that driven people make every single day. But the National Institutes of Health was ready to approve our grant. $50 million, 5 years of work, the foundation of everything we had dreamed about building together. Marcus's voice grew smaller with each word. The presentation was scheduled for the exact same week Linda was hospitalized. The choice had seemed obvious to a man who had spent his entire career believing that scientific progress justified personal sacrifice. He had flown to Washington while Linda remained in the high-risk obstetrics unit, telling himself he was securing their family's future, that this grant would fund research that could prevent other women from facing the same complications. The presentation went perfectly, Marcus said with bitter irony that cut through the evening air. The committee was ready to approve the largest medical AI grant in NIH history. I was explaining market penetration strategies when Linda went into emergency labor. Complications from the preeclampsia, emergency cesarean section. I was discussing intellectual property licensing when my wife's heart stopped beating. The baby had survived, Lily Chen, born 3 months premature with mild cerebral palsy that affected her coordination, but left her brilliant, inherited mind completely intact. Linda didn't survive the massive hemorrhaging that followed the emergency surgery. When I flew back to California, everyone congratulated me, Marcus continued, each word seeming to cost him something. $50 million, they said. The breakthrough that would revolutionize medicine. Career-defining moment. And all I could think about was that Linda would never see what we had built together. But the story didn't end with grief. It continued with a healthcare system that showed no mercy to the broken. Lily's medical needs were extensive and expensive. Physical therapy 3 times weekly, occupational therapy, specialized equipment, constant monitoring by pediatric specialists. The insurance covered only a fraction of the costs. The monthly bills exceeded $8,000. Marcus's academic salary, substantial by most standards, crumbled under the weight of medical debt. The grant money was restricted to research. University policies strictly prohibited using federal funds for personal expenses. Colleagues offered sympathy, but no concrete solutions. I liquidated everything, Marcus explained. The house, retirement accounts, Linda's life insurance policy. It covered 8 months of Lily's care. Then I faced the choice that defined who I really am: continue my career or ensure my daughter's health and future. He had researched companies obsessively, looking for organizations with exceptional medical benefits, places where someone with his background could disappear into necessary work that would provide what Lily needed. Rodriguez Tech Solutions offered comprehensive employee health care with no lifetime caps, coverage that would handle Lily's needs indefinitely. The night shift paid slightly more than day positions and left Marcus completely free during daylight hours to manage Lily's complex care schedule. Physical therapy at 9, occupational therapy at 11, pediatric neurology appointments twice weekly, speech therapy on Thursdays. He could be the present, devoted father he had never been while chasing academic glory. Every night, I clean the offices of people like my former self, Marcus finished. People who believe they're changing the world while their families fall apart around them. And I try to remember what actually matters in the end. Victoria stood in the echoing garage, processing the magnitude of sacrifice she had just witnessed. This man had walked away from everything he had achieved: recognition, wealth, prestige, the admiration of his peers, to become the father Linda had died believing he could be. Your daughters, Marcus added softly, Emma and Sophie, watching them tonight, seeing how desperately they want to help you, how much they love you despite feeling invisible in your success. They remind me of Lily when she was younger. Brilliant children who need someone present to nurture that brilliance, not just admire it from a distance. The observation hit Victoria like a physical blow. She suddenly saw herself through Marcus's eyes, the driven executive who was unknowingly repeating the same patterns that had cost him everything he truly valued. That night, Victoria made a decision that terrified her. She approached Emma and Sophie in their shared bedroom, where they were struggling through advanced mathematics homework with the kind of frustration that comes from having gifts no one quite knows how to cultivate. Would you like to learn differently? She asked carefully. Would you like Mr. Marcus to teach you mathematics in a way that might make more sense? The girls' faces transformed with hope so pure it made Victoria's chest ache. Really? He would do that for us? It would have to be our secret for now, Victoria said, though she wasn't entirely sure why the secrecy felt necessary. Just until we figure some things out. What happened next changed everything for all of them. 3 evenings per week, after the building emptied and the consultants returned to their suburban lives, Victoria brought her daughters back to Rodriguez Tech. Marcus would finish his custodial duties efficiently, then transform the marble floors of the executive level into an intimate classroom where mathematical impossibilities became adventures in discovery. He didn't teach equations, he taught exploration and wonder. A compound interest problem became a tale of pirates calculating fair treasure distribution among crew members. Geometric proofs transformed into architectural blueprints for medieval castles that could withstand both dragon attacks and siege warfare. Statistics became probability maps that determined which forest paths led to treasure and which led to danger. Emma and Sophie, who had struggled with mathematics despite expensive private tutors, flourished under Marcus's patient, creative guidance. More importantly, they learned about resilience, about love that willingly sacrifices status for substance, about the kind of strength that mops floors at midnight so a disabled child can receive physical therapy at dawn. Victoria learned too, perhaps more than anyone. Watching Marcus teach her daughters, she saw what she had been missing, not just in their education, but in their lives as whole human beings. He was present in ways she had forgotten how to be. When Sophie made an error, he didn't immediately correct it. He guided her gently toward discovery, letting her experience the joy of understanding. When Emma grew frustrated with her perfectionist tendencies, he shared stories about great mathematicians who had struggled with identical concepts. Ada Lovelace, who wrote the first computer algorithm, failed mathematics 3 times before she understood it, Marcus told Emma one evening as she erased her work for the 4th time. But when she finally grasped the concepts, she created something no one had ever imagined before. Really? Emma asked, her rigid perfectionism beginning to soften around the edges. Really? Sometimes the most extraordinary minds just need time and patience to find their own way of understanding. The destination matters far less than making sure you don't abandon the journey. Victoria found herself staying later each evening, not to review quarterly reports or prepare for board meetings, but to witness her daughter's remarkable transformation. They were becoming confident, curious learners who asked questions without fear. More than that, they were becoming whole children, seen and valued by someone who understood that genius without kindness was just expensive emptiness. 6 weeks into their secret arrangement, something unexpected happened. Marcus, working alone during his official shift and driven by the same patient problem-solving approach he brought to teaching, began analyzing Medicor AI's diagnostic failures during his legitimate break periods. As a Rodriguez Tech employee, Marcus had standard access to the company's internal network for routine tasks, checking schedules, accessing employee benefits, submitting maintenance reports. During these authorized sessions, he began discreetly examining the algorithm's performance data with the same methodical care he brought to everything he did. What he discovered was exactly what he had suspected from that first diagnostic printout. The system wasn't fundamentally broken, it was overwhelmed and misdirected. Working carefully through several weeks of night shifts, Marcus implemented elegant solutions that he documented in a secure file. Not revolutionary changes that would trigger security alerts, but surgical modifications that allowed the neural network to focus its learning on cancer detection specifically, rather than trying to become a universal medical diagnostic tool. He had left his improvements with a simple note: for Emma and Sophie's future, and for all the families who deserve better. From someone who learned too late that brilliance without love is just expensive emptiness. Victoria discovered the file on a Thursday morning that would change everything. Running Marcus's modifications through the testing protocols, she watched in amazement as Medicor's accuracy jumped from 62% to 94%, a breakthrough that would position Rodriguez Tech as the undisputed leader in medical AI for the next decade. But as she studied the elegant code, Victoria realized something that made her blood run cold. The system logs showed that someone else had been monitoring these exact files, someone with administrative access who had been tracking Marcus's work for weeks. The betrayal revealed itself through an email that arrived at 3:17 a.m. the following Tuesday, time-stamped with the precision of someone who had been planning this moment for months. Google Health's legal department was suing Rodriguez Tech Solutions for patent infringement. The technology in question? The exact improvements Marcus had implemented during his careful, unauthorized optimization work. Victoria's hands trembled as she read the patent filing. The inventor listed was Dr. James Morrison, her chief technology officer, her business partner of 8 years, the man she had trusted with both her company's future and her deepest professional confidences. The confrontation that followed stripped away 8 years of professional collaboration with brutal surgical efficiency. You really thought I wouldn't notice your pet genius rewriting our core algorithms? James said, settling into his familiar chair across from Victoria's desk. But the familiarity now felt like a violation of everything she had believed about their partnership. Dr. Chen's improvements could save the company, Victoria said, her voice deadly calm despite the rage building inside her chest. They could save thousands of lives. James laughed, a sound devoid of any warmth or humanity. Dr. Chen violated his employment agreement by accessing systems beyond his clearance level. The intellectual property he created using company resources belongs to Rodriguez Tech, which means it belongs to our partnership. I've simply ensured that the technology reaches its highest market value. The trap had been methodical and perfectly executed. James had been monitoring all network activity for months, documenting Marcus's after-hours work, building an airtight legal case that would transfer ownership of revolutionary improvements to himself. Then he had quietly filed patents under his own name and sold them to Google before Victoria even knew the technology existed. Google's offering $2 billion for our customer base and the patent portfolio, James continued with casual cruelty. The board meets Friday to vote on your leadership. Given our recent performance struggles, I think you'll find their confidence in your direction somewhat limited. But the cruelest twist was yet to come. One more thing, Victoria. If you attempt to fight this patent transfer or expose our arrangement, I'll have Dr. Chen arrested for corporate espionage and theft of trade secrets. Federal charges carry serious prison time, and his disabled daughter gets to navigate the foster care system while daddy serves his sentence. Choose your battles wisely. That evening, Victoria sat in her car outside a modest apartment building in Queens, wrestling with an impossible decision that would define not just her company's future, but the kind of person she truly was underneath all her professional success. Save her life's work and watch an innocent man go to prison, or protect Marcus and lose everything she had spent a decade building. The choice made itself when 6-year-old Lily Chen answered the apartment door. The little girl moved carefully with her leg braces, but her face radiated the kind of pure, uncomplicated joy that comes from being unconditionally loved. When she saw Victoria, her eyes lit up with immediate recognition and delight. You're Emma and Sophie's mommy. Daddy talks about you all the time. He says you're really smart, but also really sad sometimes. Are you staying for dinner? I made macaroni art that looks like computer parts. Marcus appeared behind his daughter, concern and confusion flickering across his features as he tried to read Victoria's expression. Mrs. Rodriguez, is everything all right? Victoria knelt to Lily's eye level, seeing in this child's face the future that James Morrison's greed would destroy without a second thought. I wanted to meet the brave little girl who's been inspiring my daughters to be kinder and more patient with each other. The apartment was small but filled with warmth that had nothing to do with expensive furniture or impressive artwork. Lily's colorful crayon masterpieces covered every wall. Photographs of a beautiful woman who could only be Linda smiled from various surfaces, and medical equipment was arranged so seamlessly throughout the space that it looked like furniture rather than necessity. As Lily proudly displayed her latest creation, a complex geometric pattern that incorporated Marcus's teaching methods with her own artistic vision, she chattered about her father with the unconscious wisdom that children sometimes possess when adults think they're not paying attention. Daddy used to be really sad after Mommy went to heaven, she said with matter-of-fact acceptance that broke Victoria's heart. He forgot how to smile for a really long time, and he had nightmares about computers and hospitals. But then he started helping Emma and Sophie with their number stories and teaching me about shapes that dance. And now he remembers that helping people makes the sadness get smaller instead of bigger. Victoria felt tears threatening for the first time in years. Your daddy is very special, Lily. I know, Lily said with the absolute certainty that only 6-year-olds can muster. He gave up being a famous computer doctor so he could take care of me and make sure I can walk better and think better. But I told him that maybe mommy would want him to help sick people again because that's what she wanted to do too before she had to go away. From the small kitchen, Marcus had overheard every word of this conversation. When Victoria joined him, she found him staring at a framed photograph of Linda in her lab coat, smiling beside a computer screen full of the algorithms that had started their entire journey together. She believed our work could prevent other families from losing mothers to late-stage diagnoses that could have been caught earlier, Marcus said quietly, his voice heavy with memory and regret. I thought honoring her memory meant giving up everything else that mattered, but maybe I've been wrong about what sacrifice really means. Victoria made her decision in that moment, not as a CEO protecting her company, but as a mother who finally understood what her children needed most from her. Marcus, she said, I need you to trust me, and I need you to help me do something that's going to seem completely insane, but might be our only chance to save what really matters. The next morning, Victoria called an emergency press conference that would change everything. The Rodriguez Tech Auditorium buzzed with reporters, investors, employees, and board members as Victoria stepped to the podium. Behind her, the main screen displayed a simple slide. The real genius behind Metacore AI. Ladies and gentlemen, Victoria began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to do. 3 years ago, the medical artificial intelligence community lost one of its brightest minds when Dr. Marcus Chen left Stanford University following a personal tragedy. Today, I want to reintroduce you to the man who has been quietly revolutionizing our industry while working the night shift at our company. The room erupted in confused murmurs as Marcus, wearing a borrowed suit instead of his custodial uniform, stepped onto the stage beside her. Camera flashes exploded, reporters shouted questions, but Victoria continued with the determined precision of someone who had nothing left to lose. Dr. Chen didn't apply for a research position here. He took a job in our facilities maintenance department because it provided the health insurance coverage his disabled daughter required after losing her mother to pregnancy complications. While we were paying consultants hundreds of thousands of dollars to solve our algorithmic problems, Dr. Chen was fixing them during his break periods, asking for nothing in return except the opportunity to be present for his child. She gestured to the screen, which now showed Marcus's code improvements alongside the dramatic performance increases. Metacore's accuracy jumping from 62 to 94% in controlled trials. The algorithm that will revolutionize cancer detection and save countless lives belongs to Dr. Chen, building on research he conducted with his late wife, Dr. Linda Chen. Any attempt to claim ownership of this technology represents not just corporate theft, but the betrayal of a man who has already sacrificed everything meaningful for love. The revelation that followed was swift and decisive. James Morrison's patent fraud collapsed under immediate public scrutiny. Google withdrew their acquisition offer within hours and fired James for intellectual property theft. Medical AI researchers worldwide rallied around Marcus's return to the field he had helped create. Most importantly, the Rodriguez Tech Board voted unanimously to restructure the company around a revolutionary principle: that innovation flourishes when people are supported as whole human beings, not just profitable resources. But for Marcus, the offers that poured in from every major university and technology company felt like echoes of the old life that had cost him everything he truly valued. I can't go back to that world, he told Victoria that evening as they sat in the company's new family room, watching Emma, Sophie, and Lily work together on art projects that somehow incorporated complex mathematical principles. I won't repeat Linda's mistake or mine. Lily looked up from her latest crayon masterpiece, a rainbow that somehow illustrated the concept of probability distributions. Daddy, what do you think Mommy would say about your choice? Marcus smiled at his daughter, the question cutting through his fear, with the clarity that only comes from unconditional love. What do you think she would say, sweetheart? She'd say you can help sick people and take care of me at the same time, Lily said with 6-year-old wisdom that put most adult logic to shame. And she'd say that Emma and Sophie's mommy need someone who understands about being scared of losing the people you love most. Victoria felt her heart crack wide open as she watched this little girl, who had never really known her mother, somehow channel Linda's wisdom with perfect accuracy and timing. What if we could build something different? Victoria asked quietly. What if we could create a place where brilliant people don't have to choose between their work and their families, between changing the world and being present for the people who matter most? The solution they crafted together transformed far more than just their professional lives. Marcus became Chief Technology Officer with terms that had never existed in Silicon Valley. Flexible remote work that allowed him to maintain Lily's therapy schedule, company-funded medical care that removed financial stress from her treatment, and the establishment of an on-site childcare center designed specifically for children with special needs. More importantly, they restructured Rodriguez Tech's entire culture around a radical concept that sustainable innovation comes from whole, supported human beings who bring their complete selves to work, not from brilliant burnouts who sacrifice everything personal for professional achievement. 2 years later, Rodriguez Tech Solutions went public with the most successful healthcare technology IPO in market history. The company that had nearly failed due to algorithmic problems was now worth $3.8 billion, with Metacore AI detecting cancers and other conditions 5 years earlier than any competing system worldwide. But the real success story wasn't measured in market capitalization or stock prices. Victoria stood at the observation window of the company's innovative childcare center, watching Emma and Sophie teach origami to a diverse group of children that included Lily and several other kids with various special needs. The twins had become confident, compassionate leaders who understood that everyone learns differently, that patience creates possibilities nobody could imagine, and that the best teaching happens when you meet people exactly where they are, rather than where you think they should be. The center had become a model for other companies, proving that supporting employees' whole lives actually increased productivity and innovation rather than reducing it. Parents worked better when they weren't worried about their children, and children thrived in an environment that celebrated different kinds of intelligence and ability. Marcus now worked from a glass-walled office where Lily could visit whenever she needed her father, but where he was also conducting breakthrough research that was saving thousands of lives annually. More importantly, he was present for every physical therapy session, every school performance, every bedtime story that mattered infinitely more than any scientific publication. The love story between Victoria and Marcus had developed slowly and naturally, built on shared values rather than shared ambitions or mutual convenience. They had learned that love wasn't something you fit around success. It was the foundation that made success meaningful and sustainable. Their wedding the previous spring had been small and perfect, held in the company's rooftop garden with Emma, Sophie, and Lily serving as joint flower girls and ring bearers. The ceremony had been officiated by the pediatric neurologist who had been treating Lily since birth, a woman who understood that families come together in unexpected ways when love and commitment create the conditions for healing. You know what I finally understand? Victoria said as they watched their children create something beautiful and collaborative together. What's that? Marcus asked, his arm around her shoulders with the easy intimacy of two people who had chosen each other after learning what really mattered in life. I spent so many years thinking I had to choose between being an exceptional mother and being an effective CEO. But watching you raise Lily while revolutionizing medical AI, seeing how presence amplifies rather than diminishes achievement, I finally understand the real algorithm. Which is, Victoria smiled, watching Lily carefully teach Sophie how to fold a paper crane while Emma helped a boy with autism create geometric patterns with colored blocks, their different abilities combining to create something none of them could have made alone. That you can't save lives with algorithms if you don't understand what makes life worth saving. That the most important innovations come from love and connection, not from ego and isolation. Marcus pulled her closer, thinking about Linda's final research notes, which had become the foundation for their current breakthrough in early disease detection. She always said that science should serve the heart, not the other way around. I think she would be proud of what we built here. That evening's annual research gala raised $75 million dollars for medical AI development in underserved communities, funding that would ensure no family had to choose between cutting-edge healthcare and financial survival. As Marcus and Victoria stood together on stage, watching Emma, Sophie, and Lily present awards to researchers who were changing the world without abandoning their families, they saw something unprecedented in Silicon Valley. A room full of successful people who had learned that true genius isn't about climbing higher than others, but about lifting everyone up with you. In the end, Marcus Chen did revolutionize medical artificial intelligence. But first, he revolutionized what it meant to succeed, showing that the most important algorithm for happiness was elegantly simple. Presence plus purpose plus love equals a life worth living. Everything else was just code. The night shift genius had taught them all the most profound lesson of their lives, that brilliance shines brightest not when it stands alone in the spotlight, but when it illuminates the path for others to follow. Sometimes the answer to your most impossible problems comes from the most unexpected places. From the wisdom of a man who learned that losing everything you thought you wanted can teach you what's actually worth finding. As they tucked their three daughters into bed that night, all of them safe and loved in the home they now shared, Victoria reflected on the journey that had brought them here. She had thought she needed to save her company from technical failure. Instead, she had discovered that sometimes salvation comes not from solving problems alone, but from finding the right people to solve them with, in ways that honor both excellence and love. Marcus had learned that honoring Linda's memory didn't mean abandoning their shared dreams. It meant pursuing them in ways that would have made her proud of not just their professional achievements, but their human ones as well. And three remarkable little girls had learned that families can be built in the most unexpected ways, that love multiplies rather than divides when it's shared generously, and that the most important mathematics in life is figuring out how to add kindness and patience to everything you do. The algorithm for happiness, they discovered, was open source, meant to be shared, improved upon, and passed along to anyone brave enough to choose love over lesser things.